Welcome back to the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. Unplugged from what, you say? Well, from the Jewish Old Testament to start with, and from the war god of the Jews, Yahweh One. Always remember the Jews don't follow a monotheistic religion. That's a lie. They have a dualistic religion with two opposing gods. Just like the Romans had Mars and Pax, a god of peace and love, Pax, and a brutal murdering war god, Mars. And the Greeks had their war god and god of peace, and the Egyptians had their brutal war god, Sekhmet, and another god that calms you down. The Jews were no different whatsoever. They had a brutal murdering genocidal war god, which you can have a look at Joshua at the slaughter at Jericho, and you'll see that their war god Yahweh tells them to go and kill everyone, steal everything, and steal their land, and they do it. And then Jesus says, you're children of Satan, he was a murderer and a liar from the start, and you do the lusts and desires of him. He was telling them, you are worshipping a war god, stop doing it. But they have another god of love, the same as Pax, and the Greek god Irene of peace, and the Egyptian god that calms you down. But the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Romans had a different temple and a different name, because it's a different god. That's why Jesus said you can't serve two lords at the same time. You'll offend one or the other, Either one you serve, you're going to offend the other. And he's correct. He was telling them you're worshipping two gods. He tried to bring them into only the God of love. So they did have a limited understanding of the God of love, which Jesus became at one with. And that God, instead of saying go down to Jericho and kill everyone, steal everything, and steal their land as well, which is what Yahweh One tells them to do, there's another God who tells them, if a foreigner, say someone from Jericho, is amongst you, then treat them as if they're Jewish and love them as yourself. Now that's in Leviticus. That's the other God. They're what they call the good prophets. We're trying to lead them towards an understanding of a more beautiful, loving God that's only love. So they had these other sort of dialogues going on about, maybe Yahweh's a loving God. No, Yahweh's a brutal, murdering, genocidal God, but he's our God. Well, the Romans had the same setup, two gods, well, more gods even, but they all had these two really powerful opposite forces, the dark, evil force of satanic war god, which the Jews had, and they worshipped Satan, as Jesus said. All war gods are satanic. And they had a God of love. Love your neighbour as yourself, even love a foreigner who is amongst you as if they're Jewish. Well, that's moving towards Jesus and his enlightenment. He became spiritually enlightened. He did not recognize the war god Yahweh at all. He cut the head off. So the Jewish religion, the most accurate description is this. They have a monotheistic body they call Yahweh with two opposing heads on it. Once you understand that truth and get over the lie that the Jews keep saying, that we only worship one God and all this sort of rubbish, that's just a lie. It's a deception. They're deceiving. They worship two different gods. It's as clear as an elephant in the room, but no one talks about it. Jesus is monotheistic. The divine, loving, spiritual life force that Jesus was at one with is, he describes this loving life force in another dimension, spiritual world, spiritual universe. He says, that loving creator of that spiritual world and that spiritual universe, her love is like the sun that rises on the good and on the evil. Her love is like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust. She is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Unless your love is as perfect as her love, you're not coming into her world. He was a pacifist, non-violent Christian, Christ. Christ means the anointed one, of course, but he was a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. That's the way I describe him, which is accurate. Now, everyone's got a spiritual body with them now. Doesn't matter whether you believe in religion or not, you've got one. That's the universal message of Jesus and Buddha. They both said you've got to remove the adventitious negativities from your mind, all the filth, all the divisions that cause darkness, and you'll discover you've got another identity there that's waiting for you to uncover. It's the treasure hidden in the field of the flesh that Jesus talked about. That's your true identity, a mind of only love. And Jesus said, once you find this mind that's only love, your eye will be single and your body will be filled with light. It's the same experience, and Buddha had the same experience. Then Jesus then went out and helped the poor and the prostitutes and the sinners and the lepers and the sick, the outcasts. He brought love to them because they have a spiritual body too, the same as everyone. The leper, the sinner, the prostitute. They all have a spiritual body. Even the satanic children now in the world. The Israeli army and Netanyahu satanic, Russian Putin and army satanic, Hamas satanic, Iran satanic, Ukraine satanic. They're all false False identities now, liars, murderers, killers. They worship the war god, filthy, stinking war god of death and destruction and kill, murder. But inside them is a beautiful spiritual body that can't hurt a fly. But they've rejected it. Instead, they're now in a fake identity, false, a lie. Satan is a liar. He gets you to lie about yourself so you can kill, and you create a figment of your own imagination to kill out of that has no real existence. And it dies with the flesh. But your spirit travels on, covered in filthy layers of death that you've caused. You've caused death to others. So what do you think you're covered in when your spirit leaves? You're covered in death, layer after layer after layer. 80,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Jewish satanic army. I think the Russian army and Putin have killed a similar amount of children, women and men. Well, that's how many layers of death are going to surround their spiritual body when they die. And they will reap as they sow. That will be the karmic consequences, and they will be screaming for maybe, 100,000 years, I don't know. Anyone they've killed who was a child of love, they're in heaven, happy and playing with the other children who are loved. So I had to write about this because the Jewish religion's poisoning the Christian religions. I've never worshipped Yahweh. I rejected the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16 and left it, but I took Jesus with me because I was teaching the lie that the Revelation book with Jesus coming on the clouds, which everyone knows is the book of Daniel, the Jewish book of Daniel, that's a complete slander. It's the most filthy, slanderous book I've ever seen written about Jesus in my life, and they have it in the church next to the Gospels of Jesus, next to the loving spiritual creator of love. It's a disgusting disgrace. I rip it out and burn it, and I tell every Christian to do the same. Free yourself up from the Jewish chains and octopus apocalyptic rubbish that's imprisoning Jesus, capturing Jesus and the loving spiritual creator and slandering them. So that's the book that I've had to publish in March, and that will explain more easily to you the Gospels in a much easier translation, which has all the various teachings of Jesus in them that help you awaken to become a spiritual child, to get ready to leave your body at the time of death and enter the heavenly spiritual world. So I've done my best to help Jesus and the loving spiritual creator to guide children back away from the Jewish religion and the poison that's now poisoning the Christian religion ever since the corrupt church leaders in the 4th century turned Christians into worshipping Jews again, the Jewish religion, the Jewish God Yahweh, so Roman soldiers could go and kill and be Christian. That's why it happened under Emperor Constantine. All Christians couldn't be in an army up until then, 312 AD, but over the next 50 years from then on to about 380 AD, Roman soldiers could eventually become Christians, followers of Jesus the pacifist, and go to war and kill and be a Christian. They weren't Christian anymore, they were Jewish. So the Christian leaders converted all Christians then back to be Jewish and Christian, which you can't be. You can't serve two gods. You can't serve two lords. Jesus said that. Anyway, so this book, this Gospels, it'll be an interesting read. You can buy it as an ebook, and it's cheaper to buy, so you can have a little read of it, and you might think, oh, that's interesting. No one's ever said that before to me. That makes sense. Why don't they say that? And if you buy my other book, The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, I go into much greater detail about what's gone wrong. But the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged is a good read, and it focuses on Jesus' message of becoming spiritual before your body of flesh dies so you can enter heaven. And that's what it's all about. They're the contents, and we're reading John at the moment. So I'm just putting it up on YouTube for anyone who just wants to get an idea of how I translate the Gospels as a follower of Jesus. But I belong to the original community, the original followers, the pacifist followers. Chapter 13, John. All of the important sayings in John that are repetitions found in Matthew have been combined with the Matthew sayings in that chapter. Other sayings have been placed in the appropriate early chapters regarding specific topics. The following are those sayings in John that are not mentioned in the Matthew chapter or earlier. Let's get on. Destroy this house. John 2:18-22. You'll find my translations make more sense. I had this beautiful mother, Lorraine. There she is there, Lorraine. There she is. And she was really a most beautiful person I've ever known. But everyone loved her. But she had what I call intelligent faith. We often used to discuss the teachings, but she had a really beautiful, intelligent faith. She didn't care about the Jewish religion or the book of Revelation. She was only interested in Jesus that led you to selflessness and heaven and the God of heaven who's love. I miss her greatly because she was the most intelligent person I had to talk to about what Jesus really meant and what Jesus really said. She understood it as I would like to believe I do too. He's love and non-violence. As long as you know that, you can see all the lies in the Jewish Christian gospel translations. John 2:18-22. So I've tried my best to clarify and clear away those distortions for you. Jesus drove the money lenders out of the temple. The Jews asked Jesus, "What sign will you show us to explain why you were doing these things?" Jesus said, "Destroy this temple and I will raise it up." The Jews said, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple. How will you raise it up by yourself?" But Jesus was talking about the temple of his body that contained his spiritual body within it. Therefore, when he had risen from his dead body of flesh in his spiritual body, the disciples remembered he said this would happen. Thomas 71, Jesus said, "I will destroy this house and no one will be able to rebuild it." The Thomas Gospel, that's why they wanted to destroy the Thomas Gospel, because it was too truthful. Jesus is saying, I'm going to let you kill my body of flesh and no one's going to be able to rebuild it. It's food for the vultures, because he had a spiritual body that was fully awakened, as Buddha had a fully awakened spiritual consciousness. Jesus did too. They had what's called the clear like mind experience. No adventitious negativities in their minds anymore. They couldn't hurt anyone ever again. They went to the heavenly world, or nirvanic world of no suffering, where all beautiful children go, if you want it. Also, the Gospels have been altered to falsely lead followers of Jesus into believing our bodies of dead flesh rise again. But the Thomas Gospel saying is the accurate one. Jesus is saying he is going to voluntarily allow his body of flesh to be killed and destroyed, and it does not come back to life. As Jesus taught, our dead bodies of flesh are just food for the vultures. He said that. Just read his words for a change, you Jewish Christian leaders and people. Only our spiritual body travels on to reap as we have sown. He knew he had a living spiritual body within him that does not die. He was a spiritually awakened, you see. You might say his caterpillar body and his butterfly body were alive at the same time. He had both his bodies alive at the same time. And he said, you can do it too. Become your spiritual butterfly body now of love and peace, and then express it through your physical body before it dies. Don't hurt anyone. Don't pick up the sword or gun, whatever you do. That sort of thing. Jesus is a child of our loving Creator. John 3:13-21. No one has ascended into the heavenly spiritual world through awakening except the spiritual child who has awakened and come forth into this world. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the spiritual child of humanity be lifted up, that whoever believes in him and his spiritual way should not perish, but find eternal spiritual life. For our loving spiritual Creator so loves the whole world that when one of her spiritual children awakens, she inspires them to help others to also awaken, to become her spiritual children as well. For our loving Creator does not awaken her spiritual children to condemn the world, but to help save it. Do you get it? He's an awakened spiritual child of the loving Creator. So he's going to teach me and you how to become one too. That's how we save the world, or we save children to heaven. When the children of light awaken and appear in this world by their own spiritual existence of love, they stand out in contrast and expose those who love evil and darkness more than the spiritual light. For everyone practicing evil hates the spiritual light and avoids coming to the light, for it is the truth and love, and exposes their evil deeds. But those who are in spiritual truth and love come to the light, so their deeds may reflect the love of our loving spiritual Creator in them. Beautiful dialogue, really beautiful. He's saying, once I and you wake up to our spiritual body, you and I can't hurt anyone anymore. We're on the way to heaven. We've just got to wait for our body of flesh to die. But we manifest the love now with whatever time we have left, with our family, our friends, our nation, whatever the world. We demonstrate against war. We demonstrate against the military. We just demonstrate against the armaments, against gambling, casinos, destroying people's lives. We do hold forth. We don't stay silent. We speak out, like, on the rooftop. We shine the light of truth and love to try to remove the evil from the world that's destroying so many children's lives. But we don't retaliate. We don't become like the evil. And that's why children who are satanic hate us. Author: Jesus was an awakened spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love. Once he awakened, he realized how important this spiritual enlightenment is to be able to have spiritual life after the death of the body of flesh. So he dedicated his life to teach others how to experience this spiritual awakening. As he knew, we all have the same potential to realize it, as did Buddha. Then they would have a new spiritual life in heaven after the death of their body of flesh, so never really die. Children who have become dark shadow figures of evil hate the light and the children of light. That's why Jesus was murdered. He was a pacifist. The Jews didn't want to leave their war god, Yahweh One. Samaritan woman at the well teaching. Now this is a beautiful teaching. I love it. So beautiful. Remember, the Jews spat on Samaritans. The arrogant Jews, we're the only chosen children of God. It's like the Jewish Christians who say only Jesus can save you. You're all going to hell if you don't follow Jesus. They're just Jews. They've just adopted the Jewish overlay of arrogance. But so Jesus talked to a Samaritan woman. Now Jesus had nothing to do with Samaritan, but Jesus is universal. Everyone has a spiritual body in them. The Samaritan woman does just as much as Jesus does. Beautiful dialogue. John 4:1-26. When Jesus knew that the Pharisees had been told that he was baptizing and attracting more disciples than John, he left Judea and departed into Galilee. And as he passed through Samaria, he came to a city which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jesus was weary from his journey and stopped to rest at the well of Jacob, and it was about the 6th hour. A Samaritan woman came to the well to draw water. Jesus asked her, "Can you give me a drink?" For his disciples had gone into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman asked Jesus, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? The Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift offered by our loving spiritual creator, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked me, and I would have given you the living spiritual water of life." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw the water up with. The well is deep. Where will you get this living water of life? Are you greater than our father, Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and their livestock?" Jesus said to her, "Whoever drinks of this earthly water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the living spiritual water that I shall give them shall never thirst again. And that water shall become in them a wellspring of living spiritual water, lifting them up into everlasting life." I'll stop there before I go on, because this is really important. Again, Jesus points out your body of flesh is always going to get thirsty because it's just dirt, water and gases. And you've got to keep pouring that stuff into it until it dies. He's got another life force. I mean, the water and food and gases give your body, that they sort of provide the life force, the material life force of your material body. They're material energies, material life forces for the material body of flesh. Jesus says, I can give you something that will last forever, that's eternal, and you'll never have to be hungry again or thirst again. This living life water I can give you will give you eternal life. This spiritual water I can give you, this spiritual loving life force from heaven that I can give into your spiritual body and your spiritual mind to awaken your spiritual body and nourish it, and you'll have life eternal in heaven. The living water he's speaking of is the loving spiritual life force of heaven and the creative mind behind heaven that's only love. It's that loving spiritual life force, which is a completely different substance, coming into your spiritual body from heaven. That is the beautiful water that wells up inside you like a wellspring in your spiritual body, giving your spiritual body life, and it brings you alive on the earth to be a child of peace, love, and non-violence. Because that's how you have to be if you want to enter heaven. And heaven is eternal. You receive his spiritual life force from heaven. He's got it in his spiritual body because it's fully alive. He came alive to it. He wants us to as well. It's an analogy. It's a beautiful analogy. Just beautiful. The woman said to Jesus, "Sir, give me this water you speak of, so I may never thirst or have to come to this well to draw up water." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." The woman answered Jesus that she had no husband. Jesus said to her, "You have rightly stated that you have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you are now with is not your husband either. You have spoken the truth." The woman said to him, "Sir, I can see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say that only Jerusalem is the place where one should worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the time is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the loving spiritual Creator. The time is coming and is now here, when all spiritual children of our loving Creator will express their love truly in the Spirit for her. For the loving Creator is waiting for children to awaken and join her and be filled with her loving life force. Our loving Creator is Spirit, and those who wish to love her must come to her in spirit and in truth." I'll stop there for a second. Only until I become a spiritual child, which is my true identity, ultimate identity. I have this earthly identity, that's true, but it's secondary. If I make it primary, then my spiritual identity will weaken. My spiritual identity of truth and spirit and love should be my first and primary identity every day of my life until my body of flesh dies, goes back to the earth, and I leave in my spiritual body, having lived a life of love and non-violence my whole life, hopefully. Or if I've made mistakes, I've corrected them and come back onto the path, sinned, come back. Don't go down that dark way, come back here. And we all have to do that from time to time, usually. And we have to modify our behaviour to make it even better. As I say, keep your strong spiritual points strong and strengthen your weak spiritual points. Make them stronger. That's what it's all about. We all have certain strong and weak points. You just need to attend to them. Maintain your strong spiritual points. Maybe you're very forgiving. Oh, but you're pretty greedy. Well, there's the weak point. There's the strong point. Maintain your forgiveness. Be more generous. That's what you have to do. You've got to understand yourself. Where are your weak spiritual points? Jesus gives you the instructions to go over so you understand where the weak points are and where the strong points are. Maintain the strong points. Strengthen the weak points until everything is strong. Then you start to become awakened into the spiritual identity. It's just so beautiful, these dialogues. They're lovely. I just love them so much, his words. They're just stunning. So he's saying, the time's coming when, you're not going to worship on Jerusalem or here or there, anywhere. It's going to be those who come alive to the Spirit. They're the ones who are going to worship the true loving Creator. Those whose spiritual bodies of love and non-violence come alive, they will automatically be worshipping the loving Creator in heaven wherever they are on earth. Doesn't matter where you are. You're a loving spiritual child of the loving spiritual Creator in the heavenly spiritual world. China, Australia, America, Japan, Alaska. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're a loving spiritual child of heaven, that's it. You're connected. The woman said, "I believe the Messiah will come, and when he does, he will reveal all truths." Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." I'm the one who woke up. They said someone would wake up one day. That's me. The disciples returned and marveled to find Jesus talking to the woman, but no one asked why he was talking with her. The woman then left her water pot and went into the city and told everyone, "Come and see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this man be the Messiah?" So they all went out to see Jesus. The disciples offered Jesus something to eat, saying, "Teacher, eat some food." But he said, "I have nourishment which you do not know about." So the disciples said to one another, "Has someone already brought him something to eat?" Jesus explained to them, "My nourishment comes through performing the spiritual works shown to me by our loving Creator, and bringing them to spiritual perfection for all children on earth to see and follow." See, our spirits are nourished by the loving life force flowing into us from heaven and flowing out of us to others. We're nourished by the love from heaven. But if you block it by doing evil things, you're starving yourself. And if you don't give it to someone, it can't flow into you. Understand how it works? It's pretty simple, really, but it's true. Do not say there are still 4 months and then the harvest comes. Oh, sorry, do you not say? Do you not say there are still 4 months and then the harvest comes? Behold, I say to you, lift up your sight and look upon the countryside, for the spiritual children of the light are ready to be awakened and harvested. And he who reaps receives spiritual reward through leading the children to eternal life, so that he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For this saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I send you forth to reap those for whom you have not laboured, others before you have laboured, and now you join in with their labours. Many Samaritans in that city believed in Jesus because of the testimony of the woman who said, he is a prophet, and told me all I ever did. When the Samaritans had come to see him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there for 2 days. And many more believed in Jesus after hearing his teachings. Then they said to the woman, we also believe, not because of what you told us, but because we ourselves have heard his teachings. And we now know he really is a spiritual child of the loving Creator, the Anointed One, who delivers us from the delusions and evil of this material world. Thomas 74, Jesus said, there are many standing around their fountain and well, but no one is in their water. That is classic. That's a classic Thomas Jesus saying. I give this analogy. We're like vases with water in, 2 bodies. We've got the physical body, the vase of clay, but what's inside is water, which is liquid, different substance. Our spiritual body is a different substance to the vase of clay, right? You can't see the water inside the vase of clay. You only see the clay. When you're looking at a clay vase, you just see the clay. You can't see the water in it. That's like looking at a person's physical body. You have to see through the person's physical body and talk to their spirit, find their spirit. Some people are not in their spirit, so it's hard to talk to them that way. But those who are, you will connect, and you'll know they're in their spirit. They're talking out of their spirit. That's their primary identity. And when you meet them, you'll know they're like you. You know, that's the way it works. And so those, you'll know them by their fruits. Anyone who follows the way of the loving spiritual Creator, they are my mother, brother, sister. Jesus said, they're my family. Anyone who's spiritually awakened, he said, they're my brother and sister. That's how it works. So we have 2 bodies. Which one is your primary body? Which one is your secondary body? Which one are you living out of the most? If you live out of your spirit completely, fully, primarily, you then get to express it through your secondary physical body, the vase. So you might say the light in the water emanates out through the vase to other children. But if you're in the vase, and not only that, but if you become a dark, filthy, stinking, warmongering, murdering bastard, then the light's not going to come out of you at all. And plus you're punching holes through the vase, so all that loving life force leaks out anyway, through all the murders you're committing. And so you're very, you're near death spiritually. You're spiritually nearly dead. So it's a good analogy, the water in the vase. I like using it. But Jesus is using the water in the well, and I bow to his superiority in using really beautiful terminology. But he also says it's a wellspring within you. So imagine you've got this wellspring coming up inside you from heaven. Once you realize, and you're searching for your spiritual identity and your spiritual mind of love, then this wellspring of love is going to come up inside you and fill your mind more and more and more. But you've got to clean your mind out. Then you will eventually have the clear light mind experience that Jesus and Buddha had. Jesus and Buddha said, you can do this. I did it, you can do it. And they give us the instructions. And then, of course, this wellspring, you've got to keep it clean. Imagine a little wellspring inside where the water coming up has really minute, tiny little light, sparkling lights in it, but it's crystal clean. It's so pure, it's like there's no water there at all. It's just so clean, but it wells up from heaven, and surrounded little flower garden, all beautiful flowers, and it's fresh, and everything's clean and beautiful, and that wellspring is pure, because remember, the loving spiritual Creator of heaven is pure love. Pure love. Jesus said, only the spiritual Creator is wholly good. We try to be good, and we must try our best to clean ourselves and stay clean. We must do that. We acknowledge our imperfections, but we should remember to still try to be as perfect as we can be and wake up like Jesus and Buddha did. Don't hurt anyone. Anyway, so the wellspring comes up, right? But if you commit poisonous things or do evil things, wrongdoings, particularly the satanic warmongers of the world, you cover that wellspring with poisonous things. I mean, imagine all the dead bodies that all these soldiers have killed. Imagine them, all their dead bodies rotting on this beautiful wellspring of love from heaven, because that's what they've done. They've dumped it onto the wellspring within their own spiritual life. They've poisoned their own spiritual life with stinking death. That wellspring's poisoned now. They can't feel the loving life force from heaven now. They've got to clean all that away. So that's how it works. Author, once again, Jesus draws a contrast between our temporary physical body of flesh and its needs, which have to be continually replenished by earthly elements to have life, or it will die. As opposed to our spiritual body and soul, which once it is connected to the loving spiritual life force or living waters of our loving spiritual creator, it comes to life and will be sustained eternally from within, from a perpetual wellspring, a spiritual wellspring. This is the nourishment Jesus was referring to that the disciples had yet connected with. And as eternal life is in the heavenly spiritual world, not the earth world, we need this living spiritual water now to bring our spiritual body alive and to be able to enter the heavenly spiritual world. It's such a beautiful analogy, this. So wonderful. He's so creative, in the way he talks about spiritual life for us to have now before our body of flesh dies and rots. The water Jesus refers to is given to us through hearing his words and understanding them, which awakens our spirit to receive the loving spiritual life force of our loving creator that empowers our spirit and soul mind of love. We must drink his words in and be awakened by them spiritually. We then arise into our true spiritual identity and will begin to realize who we really are as spiritual children of our loving creator in the heavenly world, and we will be just like Jesus himself. The Thomas Gospel saying points out how many children have potential to awaken and be spiritual, but they have none of the loving spiritual life force or living water from heaven in them to empower their spirits. It is like being the vase instead of the water in the vase. Clearly, the Samaritan woman could only think in terms of the earthly water without the spiritual awakening given by Jesus. So Jesus would have had to explain more to her. Just as Nicodemus could not conceive of being born again in a spiritual body and was also stuck only in the earthly realities of birth, Nicodemus said, "Do I have to climb back into my mother's womb to be born again? What are you talking about, born again?" Jesus is trying to say, you've got another body with you. You've got to get into it, and you'll be born again into the spiritual body that's in you right now, but you've got to bring it alive. Nicodemus, the Jews had no idea about this. Jesus helps us all to awaken from the body of flesh to realize we have another body of spirit with us right now, and then guides us to open our spirit up by following his teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence. Then we are prepared to fully receive and live out of the loving spiritual life force from our loving creator in the heavenly spiritual world. And as Jesus said, we then come to be with her in spirit and in truth of who we really are as a spiritual children of love. See, that's the beautiful thing about Jesus. He said a little bit earlier here, those who come alive are going to come alive now, and they'll have to come to her in spirit and in truth. Our loving creator is spirit, and those who wish to love her must come to her in spirit and in truth. Not your dead body of flesh. Forget about that. That's a Jewish lie. That's a Jewish Christian rubbish. Forget about that. That's gobbledygook. It's all to do with Jewish stuff. It's nothing to do with what Jesus is saying. Your spiritual body's going to leave at death. You must become spiritual now, full of love and non-violence. And that's your true identity, your ultimate identity. Our body of flesh and our temporary human identity is unique. And we have a unique personality to express the same universal love that's in everyone if it comes alive. Extrovert, introvert, you have that gift, I have this gift. We can express the love in a unique way. That's our personality. Our character, the makeup of our character though, is the same, love. but we just express it differently. Imagine that in heaven. Everyone there expresses love in a unique way. No one's evil. How do you get into heaven? Don't be evil. Express love now in your unique way. And we must come to her in our spiritual body. He's saying that there. Our loving Creator is spirit, and those who wish to love her must come to her in spirit, in your spiritual body. Because heaven's a spiritual world, a spiritual universe. It's not this world or universe. This is material, chemical, explosions. Blimey, who wants to stay here? I'd much rather go there. So we've got to come to her in spirit and in truth. Now the truth, of course, has a double meaning. You can't be a liar. Everyone who lives out of a false shadow identity, an ego, that's not their true identity, you see. They're living a lie unto themselves. Vladimir Putin, Netanyahu, Adolf Hitler, they all live a lie unto their true self. All these children should be true spiritual children who can't hurt anyone. But they're not, you see. They're living out of a false figment of their own ego imagination, which is a shadow figure, devoid of spiritual life. It's a lie unto themselves. They're living a lie unto themselves. They're not truthful about who they really are. They don't even know, of course, who they really are anymore because they're Satan's children. So they've gone into the dark now. But you can see how Jesus says these things. It's really quite, I just love his words. They're so beautiful. So we'll leave it there. I think I've finished everything there, haven't I? And as Jesus said, we then come to her in spirit and in truth of who we really are. Yeah, beautiful. We'll leave it there. That is such a beautiful dialogue. I love that. Nicodemus and the Samaritan teaching in John. It's just so beautiful. That well teaching has so many angles to it, so many reflections of being spiritual, and drinking earth water for my horse sort of thing, my earthly horse. I call him lightning, you know. The other analogy I use is you're a spiritual rider on an earthly horse. You are together as one until the horse dies. All pets die, but this pet, we're in it and with it, and when it dies, we feel its death. When my dog died, I felt for my dog dying. I felt, great grief. My mother, my sister died, my father. I felt great grief and loss, but I didn't die with them. I didn't experience their death. Only we experience our death, of course. But you can really feel it. Feel the other person suffering and dying. You really feel it. Now, when our horse dies, when our physical body dies, we literally experience death. That's when we experience death ourselves, by ourselves, the death of your physical flesh. But you leave it in your spiritual body. Jesus said that. The only thing he said was, how alive is it? Have you covered yourself in dark filth? Because if you have, you can't enter heaven. You'll sink. If you try to cross the river to get to yonder shore, you'll sink. The millstone around your neck of sin will drag you down. But if you haven't sinned, or if you have and you've stopped, like most of us, and you're ready to cross over and you're clean, you can walk across the water to heaven. Just as Jesus walked on the water in his spiritual body, which was so pure and beautiful, of love. So we'll walk across to heaven, all of those of us who are trying so hard not to hate and to forgive everyone who hurts us. We don't get involved in any military army in the world. We condemn them all. We condemn all the armaments industry. We condemn gambling and stuff. We try to have them shut down because they're evil. So we do shine the light of truth in the world to try to help the world be a better place. But at the same time, we know we can only be one person of love on earth and peace. We have to fulfill our own little piece of the jigsaw. If everyone was like that, there'd be no armaments industry, there'd be no wars going on. And that's the problem. Some children have become satanic. They're sick, spiritually very sick now. So we have to pray for them. That's the way it is. But beautiful analogy, the water in the well. Oh, fantastic. Love it. And I love that little bit in Thomas. There are many standing around the well, but they're not in the water. I'm a billionaire. Look at my vase. I've got jewels all over it and gold chains, and my vase goes around in a Ferrari. But inside there's no water. They're greedy billionaires. Walk past homeless people on the street. Don't give them a dollar. They're just in the vase. All vases rot, die and stink. They break apart. Only the water in the vase goes towards the spiritual world. If you've only got a drop, your spiritual body will be anemic. You'll have to undergo some sort of some revivification or rebirth, as Buddha would say. You have to do it again. As always, love your way to heaven or hate your way to hell. The choice is totally yours. Jesus and the loving spiritual creator that gives us all a spiritual life will not be involved in throwing you into hell. They won't create hell. You have to do that. And if you do that, when you're there, that's when you'll be screaming because you realize you did it all to yourself. They only loved you. That's part of hell. You realize, they only loved me. Why didn't I stop murdering all those children? Okay. Love your way to heaven, hate your way to hell. Okay. Which way do I go again? Up. I've read it.